Well, would you tell us a little bit about what you do here at Zion?
Okay, I'm Dave Sharrow. My position title is hydrologist, but I'm the sort of program manager for physical resources at Zion. So that covers all of geology and paleontology and hydrology, floods, dabble a little bit in air quality and soils,
Wow.
and occasionally native fish.
Wow. A little bit of everything.
A little of everything. Yeah.
That's awesome. I teach AP Environmental Science, which is, a college level environmental science class, and it's kind of similar, a little bit of everything. I love it. So tell us about the geologic features that we see here.
Okay, the primary feature you see here is the Navajo sandstone, and that's the giant cliff-forming sandstone. So it's the world's tallest sandstone cliffs. Not because sandstone's not a good cliff former. It's good durable sandstone will make cliffs wherever it weathers out. I've been back in West Virginia. Some of the canyons there have sandstone cliffs around the rim. And so the thing that makes these substantial and high is because the layer of sandstone is so thick. It's the Navajo sandstone, and it is the preserved remnants of the largest sand dune desert known to have occurred on Earth. The amount of sand in the Navajo sandstone is estimated at 33,000 cubic miles of sand.
Wow.
Yeah. So by volume, it is much larger than anything else known. And by area, it depends how you define the area. There's some places where the Navajo looks like it was laid down, but then it's been weathered away, and so it's hard to calculate that. But a very large sand dune desert, and the dunes were blown by winds from north to south, and they accumulated here up to about 2,000 feet thick. So this is where the Navajo is at its thickest, right here.
And so the majority of the park, when you're looking from the top to the bottom, is all that Navajo sandstone?
That's sure the prominent one that stands out everywhere. From every angle, that's what forms the canyons of Zion, and that's why it was made a national park, because of those enormous sandstone cliffs and all the canyons cut into the sandstone. There's a couple of things that make Zion what it is. The key characteristics that I think are the key characteristics. One is that the presence of all that sandstone, and that we can cut it. The other thing is that we're on the Colorado Plateau, but this is right at the western edge of the plateau. And the Virgin River is cutting into the plateau very aggressively. It's very new. It could only have been here as long as the Colorado River cutting through Grand Canyon. And when all these drainages hooked up and had an outlet to the sea, then the Virgin could start growing and cutting back into this area. So we're right on the edge of the plateau. The plateau is uplifted compared to the base and the range, and we have a new river cutting into it. So our rate of erosion is extraordinary. We have a nice lava flow a little west of here that flowed down a canyon, a tributary stream, and it's been dated to about exactly 1 million years ago. And since that lava is durable and everything around it is soft, everything around now has eroded away. And that lava flow is a ridge line.
Wow.
And so we have a ridge line that used to be the valley bottom, and it is 1,300 feet above the surrounding terrain.
Wow.
Now, so we use that as our gauge for the rate of erosion. So 1,300 feet per million years works out to about 15 inches every 1,000 years, which is a screaming rate of erosion.
Yeah.
And it tells us that one thing is this canyon is moving. It's cutting into the plateau, and it's going to be eroding upstream at a rate something on the order of 10 miles every million years. So sometime in the next million years, we'll have to get a boundary revision and move the park further upstream.
North.
Yeah.
But that's for someone else to do.
Yeah.
So the Virgin River is a tributary of the Colorado then?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it joins right now in Lake Mead.
Okay. Tell me about your education, your background.
Okay, my degree, I have a bachelor's degree in watershed hydrology from the University of Arizona. And then I got a job after that with the National Park Service and with Forest Service as seasonal jobs, and started out with the Park Service at Grand Canyon. And at that time, the entire resources management or science staff for the park was about 7 people.
Wow.
Now it's well over 50.
Right.
So at that time, it was well, there's more than enough to do.
Yeah.
But also it was great because you got to work on just about everything that came up.
Right.
Whether it was bats in caves or river management issues or grazing issues, boundary fencing, pretty much you name it, when it came up, we got to work on it.
Right.
So the variety was great.
Yeah.
And then I worked for a while with the National Park Service's Geologic Resources Division, mostly on abandoned mine lands.
Okay.
And then with the Park Service's Water Resources Division, and that's a Washington office, and we support the parks. So I got to work on parks all around the country, assisting them with various water issues. Another one of those, whatever comes up, kind of passes.
Right.
And then about 15 years ago, moved here to Zion and started working here in my current position.
Decided to stay for
Yeah.
That's great. All right.
Not a day goes by when you look around and go, wow, this is really special.
We've been, driving through all these amazing places, and every time you turn a corner, it's, wow, look at that. Wow,
Yeah.
look at that. And we were wondering if you ever get accustomed to it to the point where you don't appreciate it,
No.
If
At
you
least
live here.
for me, you look around and it's pretty incredible scenery.
So, can you describe the ecosystem here? It looks like there's a lot more, compared to where we've been. I imagine because of the river, we have a lot more trees here. Maybe some different flora and fauna.
Yeah, very different. Well, and that's a product of the geology here. This is an arid environment. Where we're standing, we get probably 12 to 13 inches a year of precipitation, maybe a little more than that. If you go just a little further downstream and lower in elevation, it's down around 8 or 10 inches a year in, say, the St. George area. And then if you get up by Bryce Canyon, up in higher elevation, they probably get 25 to 30 inches a year of precipitation. So in the west, we have a lot of elevational difference, and precipitation increases with increasing elevation. So that's a pretty consistent pattern. So we're fairly dry. So it's a desert environment. We have a lot of desert vegetation, but we also have these rivers flowing through. And the rivers are here because of the Navajo sandstone. It's a wonderful aquifer. Its sand grains are well designed if you wanted to make an aquifer out of them. They're all about the same size, and they're well rounded. They did a long trip to get here, and a lot of picking up by water or wind and getting carried and banging around with each other and deposited, then picked up again and moved. And so by the time they got here deposited into the Navajo sandstone, they were sorted by size, sorted by composition, and sorted by and rounded in shape. So what that means is within the sandstone there's a lot of empty space. About 25 to 30% pore space in this Navajo sandstone. And they're almost all silica, quartz silica sand. So there's no dissolvable, very little in the way of soluble minerals that would contaminate the water flowing through them. So it has lots of space for the water and doesn't contaminate with salt minerals. So that sandstone holds the water, percolates down through the sandstone. The layers below it are less permeable, so it pools up in the Navajo. And when the river has cut canyons into the Navajo sandstone and exposed that contact between the permeable and the less permeable, that's where the water spills out.
Okay.
So we have hundreds, literally hundreds of springs that feed the rivers that drain through the park and in this area. So we have a lot more water than many of the other parks you'll see on the Colorado Plateau.
Yeah. So this isn't necessarily rain runoff or snow melt. This is coming out of the mountain.
This is a very dry year.
Yeah.
So there's no runoff occurring right now. So this is what we call base flow. When the water is down and it hasn't had any snow melt or rainfall input for a long time. It's just the water discharging out of the groundwater system.
Wow. That's amazing.
So that supports this riparian vegetation. The cottonwood trees and the other trees along the stream channels are supported by that extra moisture.
And do you see any unique animal species here in the river, fish or anything?
We have, we're probably, and you might find another manager that would say, oh no, we have that too, but we're real fortunate. We have 4 species of native fish, endemic native fish, and they're all still here, and they're all in healthy populations. And, fish are one of the group of organisms that's most messed up.
Yeah.
Around the world, but in North America in particular, because we tend to move fish around willy-nilly everywhere, or we certainly have in the past. And so fish get stocked because we think they're going to be good game fish, and they get stocked because people use bait from one area and they move it to another. And so our fish systems are really generally messed up. And native fish in a lot of areas are having a lot of difficulty. There's many endangered species, many fish on the endangered species list because of that loss of habitat competition. So we're fortunate because we have all of our native fish and they're all healthy populations. And that's attributable to the fact that we have all of our stream flow. We don't have any large reservoirs upstream of the park. So all the natural floods that come down the canyon, we get them. All the sediment that comes down the canyon, which we have a tremendous amount of sediment that gets transported out of here. If you imagine that rate of erosion,
right.
It's we got to be moving rock out of here a lot, and all the time. And so we have a lot of sediment load. We have a lot of floods. We have periods of low flow. So that natural hydrology is what the native fish are adapted to. So they do well. And the exotic fish, there's been trout and other species stocked here, and there are a couple of fish, a few around. You can find them if you look hard, but they don't do well. And they've never flourished to the point or at the expense of the native fish. When we look at populations after a flood event, what we see is that the native fish are up here before the flood, and after that they're reduced. They suffer during these big floods. But the exotic fish go way down here. Their population crashes after those floods.
They just don't have the adaptation to have a good along.
Yeah, and some of that is their physiology. They can't handle the sediment. Some of it might be behavioral. That they don't get the clues that, when the river comes up and turns muddy, that you head off into the bushes and hide while that event's going on.
What about mammal species or reptiles, or are there any other unusual species here along the lines?
We're the furthest north and east population of desert tortoise occurs in the park. So we're right at it's an ecotone where the Mojave Desert and the Navajoan Desert and Great Basin, and then the high plateau country where all of those species sort of come together. So we have a high diversity of species here available in the park. And that's partly our location, partly just the big elevation change.
So when visitors come here, what do you think is something that they typically miss? What do you feel like visitors might not catch on to?
What do visitors miss? Do you mean? Yeah,
are there
specific.
things that they don't see because they don't get far enough off the beaten path, or are there things that you think?
Well, I think all visitors are, you come to a spot with your life experience and knowledge base with you for whatever that is. And so very often, I know when I look at a cliff face, a canyon wall, I'm seeing things that a visitor wouldn't see because I know the geology, the different layers, and what their history is, and why is one place eroded into a slope and the other a cliff, and one cliff rounded and the other vertical, and things like that. But that's not something, I mean, we can help with our interpretive staff and our web pages and things to help give people a knowledge base to see and understand some of that. But we're always, I guess that's a good thing, that we're always dealing with this range of different knowledge base.
Right.
And because then we can all learn something.
Right.
As we go. So, missing things, I don't know, you might be able to express that, because is this the first time you've come out west to look at these parks?
It's
because
not
you're
the
probably
first time
dealing
I've
with
been out west, but it's the first time I've been out west for some of the development. I mean, I was 13 when I came out the first time, and I looked at all the pretty colors, but I had no concept of what it meant. Understanding how those strata were deposited.
a process that put that rock there, and the reason it's weathering away the way it is.
Yeah. And so I think I see it in a very different viewpoint now. And it's really interesting, but then, I still feel like there's so much that I don't understand too. And every time I look at something, I get new questions.
Yeah.
So I imagine that goes on for a while.
Yeah. Well, whenever you're looking at geologic questions or seeing a landscape, the time is the thing that's hardest for people to appreciate, because we're stuck in our lifespan sort of time frame. And when you start talking about things that happened, over a million years or so, that's just, even when you think you understand it, it's hard to really understand what kind of time frame that is.
Right. The difference between 1,000 and 100,000 and a million years.
Right.
It's hard to put it into to really get that perspective.
Yeah. That's a difficult thing.
Yeah.
Were we supposed to cross the river in some way?
I don't think so.
Game Kieran?
Yeah.
I assume that's what those are.
Just a